we discussed a little bit how we were going to make that transition physically, not in words, and I think we fumbled it already. Good morning. My name is Mike Haney. I'm the director of the Institute for Veterans and Military Families at Syracuse. I want to, on behalf of my team at the Institute, welcome you all here. It's an honor and a privilege to have some time, to be able to spend some time with you today. I also, before I move any further, want to thank the folks at the Bob Woodruff Foundation. Anne-Marie and her team are just truly phenomenal partners. It's a pleasure to work with them, and this is not our first collaboration, and I hope it will not be our last. Anne-Marie provided a great overview, if you will, of why these issues are important, and we talked a little bit over the course of the last couple of days, and she kept saying I'm supposed to get up here then and say something professorish related to statistics and numbers, and I had a Gilligan's Island kind of flashback that, you know, I am the professor and I'm supposed to bring all of this empirical insight and knowledge to these issues. But the reality of the situation is I could talk about service-connected disability as a function of a barrier to employment. It is in fact true that we are coming off a period of conflict where the rate of service-connected disability impacting those who have served over the past 12 years is actually unprecedented in U.S. history. Conservatively, about 30 to 35% of those who have served since 2001 will make the transition to civilian life with an enduring physical or invisible disability as a consequence of their service. And that really is a good news, bad news story. The reason that that rate is so high primarily is our medical technology has advanced to the point where our service members are surviving injuries that they may not have survived in the past. The other side of that coin is now many of those men and women will live out their lives with a disability that will have implications for their post-service life. As we think about how we relate that to employment, you know, honestly, it's intuitive. The extent to which we are able to support and empower our transitioning service members and our veterans with gainful and meaningful employment should make intuitive sense. You know, as in terms of the motivation for why for many folks, it's actually a generalizable characteristic across our society in terms of the importance of work and career in one's life. So I'm not going to actually, and I think my colleague James Schmeling is going to get up and he's going to throw some charts and graphs at you as soon as I'm finished here. I'm actually not going to spend much time on that. I actually want to talk for a minute about a fuzzier issue as it relates to veterans with disabilities and employment. And that is what is less intuitive and really less understood by many folks who do this work is the very, very powerful relationship between career, work, vocation, and one's self-identity, the story that you tell about who you are. And this was driven home to me in a very powerful way when I met a young Marine Corps veteran a few years back who was participating in one of our programs, who told me a story about waking up in a hospital bed. He was injured in Iraq, and the next memory he has is waking up in a hospital bed in Germany. And once he realized the extent of his injuries, and this was back in 2003, 2004, once he realized the extent of his injuries, he said one of the first things he went to was, geez, I introduce myself to everybody I meet as, you know, as, hi, my name is Justin, and I'm a Marine. And he said one of the first things he thought of in that hospital bed was, if my career as a Marine is over, how am I going to introduce myself to people? And think about how powerful that is in the context of describing the relationship between career and work and the narrative that we craft to describe who we are. And when you think about the transition from military to civilian life, it is, by definition, discontinuous. When you think about that transition in the context of veterans with disabilities, particularly disabilities that were born out of traumatic injury, that transition to civilian life is not only discontinuous, but is in fact by definition traumatic as well. And part of the challenge then becomes leveraging employment, leveraging career and work, not only to help a veteran put food on the table, but also to help them recraft a sense of who they are and their future self-narrative. It is a less understood but very, very central dimension of why we do this work. You know, and Leo told a story to drive home some of his points, and as he's sitting there, he said, I'm going to tell you a story, and I said, I was going to say I'm going to tell you a story. And then he said he's going to tell you a story about John, and I said, I'm going to tell a story about John too. My John's a different John than his, and I want to tell you John's story to drive home the point that I just made. John was a young Marine. John was a Force Recon Marine. I was an Air Force officer. I have no idea what that meant when I heard it the first time, but that was a pretty tough Marine. And John went to Iraq, came home, had some physical injuries, but also was really struggling with some invisible injuries as well. And after the welcome home parties and the relatives visiting, et cetera, John really fell into a period of struggle. His wife would tell me stories about how she would get up to go to work and, you know, find him sitting by himself in a room in the dark, and she'd come home at night and he's sitting in the exact same place she left him in the morning. And John was looking for a mission, and you know, he, as a consequence of his mother-in-law, actually got involved in one of the programs that we run up at Syracuse, designed to help veterans become self-employed. And you know, the story is not necessarily about John's self-employment, but I will tell you, John went through that program and, you know, came to us with not a very specific idea of what he wanted to do in the context of starting a business. He happened to work construction as a high schooler before the Marine Corps, and other than being a Marine, the only thing John knew was construction, so he said, I'll start a construction company. And after he finished that program, he went back down to Texas, where he's from, and he started a company called Patriot Contractors. And long story short, I will tell you that this year John will do about $14 million, I think, in revenue. He has 26 some odd employees. He came out recently as number 131 on Inc. magazine's list of the 5,000 fastest growing privately held companies in America. That's not the important part of the story, though. The important part of the story is if you talk to John, he will tell you that starting that business, and more than that, really internalizing the identity of business owner saved his life. That's what he will tell you. He said, it could all go away tomorrow. My business could burn down. I could lose all my customers, et cetera. But I still now know who I am. I am John. I am a business owner. That's the opportunity that you all have today in front of you, and in the context of the work you do moving forward. It's not just about a paycheck. Part of what you're focused on and should be focused on is how do we leverage employment opportunities for our veterans with disabilities to help them recraft a new sense of who they are and a self-narrative that tells the story of who they will be in the future. So thank you so much for taking time out of inherently busy schedules to be part of this, spend some time with us. And on behalf of Anne-Marie and the Woodward Foundation, the Institute, I know we're all looking forward to a productive next 24 hours. And on that note, I'd like to introduce my colleague, James Schmeling, who's the Managing Director of the Institute for Veterans and Military Families, who's actually going to come up and do what they thought I was going to do with charts and graphs and numbers and tell you a little bit about the employment situation. And then we're going to jump right into our first panel. So, James.